I get to work with leaders frequently at Decide Your Legacy. I mean, that's what we do. We work with leadership teams. We work with leaders. And I'm often amazed at the response I get from people. It may be a month later, it may be a week later, it may be even a year later, but when they do something that I have seen them be really terrified of, and they actually go through and do it, because they get some clarity, they get inspired, they actually take an action. I see this, and I see this new person, this energized person, and then they build on that. They build on the fact that they faced something in their life, and they were courageous, and then they realize and see this potential that they didn't actually know they had. And they want more of it. I don't see people saying, hey, I don't want to do any more courageous things because I face this thing. It's generally it's always, I would say, I hate to use real extreme words, but they want to face something else. What else can I do? Because they see the impact that it actually has. And what I find is that this courage is facing an internal fear, not an external fear. It's like if somebody's afraid of flying or somebody's afraid of dogs, there's an internal fear that I could fail. Something really bad could happen. I'm not good enough. I'm going to be embarrassed. Embarrassment's like an internal fear, but being bit by a dog is an external fear. It would suck. I don't want to be bit by a dog. But it's that, am I going to look weak? Am I going to mess this up? And today we're going to talk about 3 big benefits of being courageous as a leader in your businesses, in your homes. And, caveat, everybody is a leader. Everybody's a leader because you're somebody in your community, in your church, in your neighborhood. You're a brother, you're a sister, you're a son, you're a father. You have people that are watching your life. And as I've said before, hopefully they're not peeking through your window at night, but they are watching you. You have an impact on other people's lives. Leadership is influence, and you get to do that. Now, if you don't live courageously, a lot of consequences. You can get stuck in your head, making excuses, avoidance. I see that happen at times when people are about to be courageous, and then all of a sudden they go on this tangent. They make an excuse to not engage. They make an excuse to deal with some other problem. They have a safer problem that's valid, but they go get consumed in that, some other area of drama. We don't want to do that. You see relationships stay stuck when people aren't courageous. You see people not growing. So welcome to the Decide Your Legacy podcast. Today's episode is on 3 benefits of being courageous as a leader. And what you're going to get from listening today is get some inspiration to go out, do some scary stuff, even though you don't know what the outcome is going to be, which is what courage is. You don't know. It's not courageous if you've done 100 skydives and you do your 101st skydive. It is courageous in a sense, but it's not like somebody on their first skydive. It's not where you're letting go at the same level. It's still a great thing. Go ahead and still do it. But you're going to see some things specifically that you can do that are going to help you go to the next level. So I'm Adam Gragg, and I'm a legacy coach. What is that? Well, hey, I'm a coach. I help people focus on their potential, make long-term change, and really create this future that they want. Create a plan to get there. Help business teams do that. Cultivate cohesive, high-trust teams. We, and I shouldn't say just I, because I have 2 other coaches here in the audience that are going to actually share today as well, but we help people go to that next place in a year, the ideal vision, get there, and it's a step-by-step process. We help leaders and businesses live courageously, and again, everyone is a leader. So I struggle here. I struggle with perfectionism. Just today, I had a meeting with my team, and I was thinking, I'm going to let them down because I don't have all this stuff refined, and I've probably conveyed, which I do. I can embellish and I can act like I have things like organized on paper. I have things organized in my head, and I'll act like it's more organized on paper. But I've been challenged to be very careful with that by my good friend Doug, and he annoys me, but I actually love him for challenging me. And so I don't want to be, my struggle, I don't want to be seen as weak. I don't want to be embarrassed. I have this fear of embarrassment. And I want you to think, as you're listening, what is your struggle with doing that next courageous, brave thing with your coworkers, with your kids, that conversation that you've been dreading having, but you just don't know how to go about it. And you don't want to you think that maybe if I have this talk with my son, he's going to disown me. Maybe if I have this talk with my coworker, he's going to quit. She's going to quit. That's the fear that we have to face and we can face. So nothing's more important in your mental health than what? If you heard me talk before, Then
playing it safe.
Yeah, not playing it safe.
Not playing it safe.
Not playing it safe. So we're going to talk today about how we are going to change the way we function in little ways, and that's how you start to not play it safe, to going to that, to challenging ourselves. So I have two special guests with me today. One of them you've already met before. It's Kelsey Torkelson. I once introduced her as Legacy Torkelson. I realized that. That was kind of strange. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but I did. And she's our brand relations director at Decide Your Legacy, and she's an assistant legacy coach. She gets our coaching on speed, on track, make sure we do it the right way. She follows up. She is a crucial part of that process. And today, we have a brand new legacy coach, Sherman Orr. And you're going to get to know Sherman as we are asked questions by Kelsey about living courageously as a leader. And you're going to get to hear about his experience. He's a very unique, special guy who, as I look at his life, he's made courageous decisions that would be really hard, that are going to be inspiring to you, and going to share stories about his life that you can resonate with, because we can all resonate with things being hard, and we don't want to face it, and we want to look at ways to actually avoid. So one thing I do in every podcast episode is I share one thing that I have done recently, an action I've taken that was brave, and something that I faced a fear. And today, I actually texted with a gal that somebody had texted me on Facebook, and someone I know, not really well, but she said, hey, I have this friend like to meet you, or like to be interested in talking to you. You know, not really kind of strong language, but had an interest. And are you interested? You know, she's this age and has these kids, and she's really, you know, gave me some insight into her qualities and things like that. And I said, sure, I'd love to meet her. You know, but you know, the thing about that is I don't know this person. I saw a picture, but I don't really know. I mean, so I'm happy to meet somebody. And if I think of it as, oh my gosh, I'm going to get rejected, or I'm going to have a difficult boundary situation, or all these things that could go wrong when you meet somebody new, then I'm going to be paralyzed. You know, it's not good. Right. When I think like this is an opportunity, meet somebody new, maybe a friendship, maybe other connections, then it's just fine. So Kelsey, go on in and ask us some questions about being courageous as a leader.
Can you share a time when you had to make a difficult decision that scared you, but you knew it was the right one?
I suppose you're asking me?
I am.
Okay. Well, yeah, actually, it's very fresh in my mind. I was a priest for 33 years of the Catholic Church, and probably the last 6 or 7 of those years, I've found that things were not going well. I had great difficulties with the leadership, very non-responsive, not caring, and not really living the what I would say what our faith is about, which is about individual people and their human dignity and taking care of them. And it happens, I mean, priests need that too. And I had been praying about it for probably up to last 5 years or so. And I was faced with the question is like, Sherman, are you willing to just continue to be treated this way for the rest of your life, which I could have done? Or are you going to step out in courage and leave ministry and do something else that's going to help people? And so that was scary. I've been involved in the Catholic Church for over 40 years with seminary life and whatnot, and no support system outside of it. Once you're out, you're out. No connection back to the chancery or anybody downtown to help. They just said, in effect, well, basically, I don't know what they said because they never talked to me. And besides kind of closing the door and saying goodbye, good riddance. One less headache, maybe. And so I said, I need to step away from this and start something new. So it was a tremendously traumatic experience. But at the same time, I knew I had to do this because I would begin to wither, become bitter, and a smaller person because of it. And so I've seen too many people go that route in my ministry. And so I wasn't going to be that kind of a guy. So 2.5, 3 years ago, I resigned and left it, and now got certified as a coach and am working with Decide Your Legacy and continuing really my own ministry in a different way, but in the same way to help people grow in whether it's their leadership skills or their personal life, and encouraging them to be courageous.
Yeah, that's so cool, because even yesterday there were some clients that already knew didn't know Sherman was working at Decide Your Legacy now, but know him or of him, and the reception and excitement. And so at least from two specific, clients, or just, wow, that's really cool, and what a great fit. And also just how hard that would be. One person said, like, man, that would be, you move out of the Catholic Church as a priest and you stay in the same area, that would be, wow, that would be really, really challenging. And I have a lot of respect for that. That was what the client said. I have a lot of respect for that. That's really exciting. So pretty cool. And for me, one of the biggest ones in my life, times when I had to make a difficult decision that scared me, was when I was in my early 20s. I had it relates to the church, believe it or not. I had not a Catholic church, but I did grow up Catholic, and my family is Catholic. But I have gone and been involved in the Catholic Church in the last 7 years, but in the Protestant church mainly. And when I was really young and I was new to getting really plugged into the faith, I wanted to be mentored, discipled, and had a situation in a big church where there was an untrustworthy person that I was being mentored by, discipled by. I mean, it was not a healthy. It was where there was a power differential, and it was just kind of, long story short, just a very unhealthy. It wasn't. I was in a situation that I should never have been in. No one should ever be in, basically, when they're in being mentored. And it took me a long time to kind of come to terms with it. In fact, for a long time, I just kind of shoved it away and said, that's just a bad experience. I don't have to deal with that. I'm not going to actually ever deal with that. So I didn't tell anybody, So, yeah. And it was 6 years later, after the horrific deal, that I actually went out and said, hey, this is a bad deal. This needs to be dealt with. I don't want anyone else to be impacted. I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I've gone through. And I brought it out to the organization and the church, and it really wasn't addressed to my satisfaction. It was addressed, it was faced, but I didn't feel like it was dug deep enough to see if other people had been impacted. It was, let's kind of scratch the surface, but not greatly deal with it. But I was terrified. I mean, just terrified to actually bring this out, looked at as weak, and then I brought it out again to the surface about 18 years later. Well, after that, so it was I'm 51, so this is a long time ago. But eventually I brought it out again, and it actually was dealt with better, but that was terrifying. I mean, like, it does, I think, like, facing things in your life that happened a long time ago and dealing with it is a scary thing. I have a tremendous amount of respect. It's like you're on the front lines for people. And I know people have dealt with much, much worse stuff than I have. Yeah. I mean, it's not nearly, I mean, I know, but I also don't want to discount the fact that little things, betrayals and abandonment and little, they're not little, but like maybe you didn't have it to the extent as someone else, but still as much of a violation. I mean, even though it wasn't ongoing, it still was a huge kind of, can I trust people anymore because of this? Because I trusted someone and they hurt me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sherman, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What fears have you had to confront in your leadership journey?
I was pastor of 7 different parishes in my priesthood, and I would say one of the first ones you have to confront, I think everybody has this problem, but but when you're in a leadership position, it really gets magnified because you get in a very positive way, you get love bombed. Everybody wants to love their pastor, and every pastor, no matter what he says, wants to be loved. And so when you're going through that leadership, and you have to confront the fact that there's going to be people who are not going to love you. They're not going to respect the decisions you make. They're not going to support you. And you can't let that stop you from doing the right thing at the right time. So that's been one of the big ones, I think, is that I would coddle people. I might massage the message so it was more easily to be heard by different ears, and I would shape it to different audiences and whatnot, however it happens to be. Instead of, over the years, I've grown in my courage to be able to say, no, this is what it is, and you're strong enough to face the backlash or whatever happens, or the discontent that may grow from this, and continue to do it. So that's been probably one of my biggest fears, is being able to say, it's okay for people to disagree with you and not think you're right.
Mm-hmm. And say it anyway.
And say it anyway.
And
because
say it anyway, but be
it needs
nice
to
about
be
it.
said. Yeah.
And that is a trait that I have found very inspiring, that I've sensed in you, is you're the kind of person who is going to tell people the truth and do it in a kindest way possible, even though they might not be receptive to it, but have the courage to say, hey, here's a concern that I'm seeing. And that, actually, as I look with clients that we have worked with over the years, that's oftentimes a breakthrough moment when you take the risk to tell them the truth and they realize how you care. And that's why you're saying that to them. And they grasp that and they see it. And then it's like almost what I've said before, when a client in an interaction realizes that you see their potential in the dialogue, like you've won them. Like the trust is there because you see how much value they have and how much potential they have. And it's similar in that when you give them some truth and it's like, he really cares. She really cares. And that's why they said that. It's almost, then you've won them even more. I mean, they all go hand in hand.
Right. It's building that relationship of trust and being able to hear that and say it, and for them to hear it and them to realize, oh my gosh, this guy, they want my good. They want the best for me.
Yeah.
And I just need to maybe open up a little more, be courageous.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful. So I've had to confront the fear of being judged by people and being embarrassed by people. So the things that I do that I have trouble with is if I'm embarrassed, and I'll even just avoid those potential situations and be able to be in those situations and then actually be comfortable with myself to practice it. I know when I got divorced, that was just a traumatic situation. And one of the things that I was so embarrassed about is, so I wore a wedding ring for a long period of time after my divorce because I didn't want anyone asking me about it. I didn't even know how to explain it. And it was the embarrassment. So taking that off, and then I knew I was open to questions. Like, why isn't Adam wearing a wedding ring? He's been wearing a wedding ring for as long as I've known him. And that was, it opened me up to being embarrassed. But then realizing that that's their reaction, I can just didn't have to give them the whole story, but I could give them enough information to say, I'm not married any longer, and I'm sad about it, and it's really hard. And then they could, at least it starts to build some level of trust. So that is letting go of that fear of judgment. Yeah, that's hard every day.
Mm-hmm.
Sherman, what daily practices help you act with courage when it's uncomfortable?
I would say the first thing would be, and I've been reflecting on some of this today, the first thing would be getting out of my bed when the alarm goes off. Now,
I thought you didn't have an alarm.
Most of the time, I make
That's
it
right.
well before my alarm goes off. I do have an alarm.
Oh, I was thinking you didn't have an alarm. Okay.
I do have it set, but
What is it set at?
it's set at 5:45.
Oh.
But I rarely hear it go off. So, but when I get up, when I'm ready to get up, I don't just lay around in bed. I get up and go and get my coffee religiously. And then so there's that uncomfortableness of some days I do want to stay in bed, nice and warm, electric blanket, old house, great. But I got to get up and do it. I do my prayers every day. I spend an hour in prayer every morning.
Oh my.
And I do that religiously. I've done that for 40 odd years now, and I'm not going to stop. I'll never stop doing that.
You like to use the word religiously.
Yes. I'm bound to it.
Okay. That's good. That's good.
And I would say another one that is not abstemiousness, but being careful about what I eat and drink.
Mm-hmm.
So, I love, everybody that knows me know I love my rye whiskey. I love my Irish whiskey. I have one drink a night.
Yeah.
And I'll sit there some nights and think, gosh, a second drink would just be perfect. It'd hit the spot and it just tastes so good. I was like, nope, you've had your one.
Yeah.
Put it down.
Yeah.
Go do something else. Distract yourself.
With something, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's it's the daily acts of small victories that lead to the big ones.
Yeah,
That is true.
Yeah, so just kind of piggyback off that, like I find that if I look at my schedule and I have my schedule set, and then I know I want to talk myself out of certain things in the schedule. I mean, there's typically, even if I have in my schedule that I have downtime, and that downtime is like is reading, reading and relaxing and doing anything that's mindless before bed. But I will continually fight and say, like, I have got to do this other thing that I know is so important. And sometimes it's work, sometimes it's to get some kind of financial stuff organized or some kind of productive action, which is not what I want to do. But if I can stick with it and trust the schedule that I made this when I was in a sane moment, and it's going to be healthy, it's going to be good, and go ahead and do it. I mean, even the other day, it was on Sunday, in my schedule, I had to go on a run, at least I had planned to go on a run, and I just kept saying, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to relax and watch football. And then I went on a run, I did it, and it kind of just started for a good Sunday evening. And then I felt good about starting the week, so it was just a really positive thing. And, one thing about Sherman is I talked to him about this one discipline here, because I told Sherman and I were golfing on Sunday, and Sherman's a very good golfer, and I'm a beginner golfer. He's given me some tips, being my caddy, really good, fun stuff. But I shared with him there about my struggle with nicotine, and I thought, this is something that I've had for the last 4 or 5 years. And I said, what's your best advice, kind of, to stop? And one of the things that he said was to set discipline constraints, so, and then to cut back as you go, and to replace it with a better positive habit as you go, which, I stopped for a year, but then I use it to medicate my ADHD mind, slow me down. It's like, and so, but it's courageous to follow through for yourself, to show up for yourself. Like you're having a whiskey, nothing wrong with that. Hey, I'd like to have another one, but I'm just going to go do something else really positive. So the first benefit that I want to share, when you as a leader are willing to do the hard thing and be courageous and have the fierce conversation and deal with the issues, this sounds very counterintuitive, but your own anxiety as a leader is going to actually decrease. It's going to decrease for a bunch of different reasons. One, because you're going to have some positive results by being courageous, and you're going to start to create this memory bank of situations where you face something and it actually went well.
Yeah, right.
So you were addressing an issue and they actually were receptive. Maybe in the past you had issues you addressed with somebody and they were not, but now you have a good experience. You're going to decrease your anxiety because you're actually focusing on something that you can control versus something that's out of your control. It's out of your control. What you do with your behavior is in something you can influence. The fact that you're going to do it and check it off your list, that's not necessarily the best way to live, but you're showing up for yourself. And then you're realizing that I can still do these things even when I don't feel like it. Right. Which is really positive for everybody.
Keep promises to yourself. So you're showing up for yourself.
That's a huge benefit to living this way, and it's just going to build from there.
Just curious, who helped you put the times of running and working out in your calendar?
Kelsey helped me with that. And actually, one thing is great about a calendar for me is to say, like, how does this look? Is this doable? So if I'm notorious for putting in too many business appointments in a day. So there were times in my career where I put 6 clients in a day.
Oh yeah.
And or not enough margin in my day. And you run it by somebody like Kelsey, who's skilled at that, which is not my skill set. It's like, this is what margin looks like, and you can handle it. And then I can show up better for myself and not feel like a failure, because it does make me feel, if I don't get things done, I don't like it. And it kind of builds on itself that, okay, I dropped the ball here and here. And it wasn't really things that people didn't know about. I'm not really one of the people who I don't want to let other people down, but I'll let myself down.
Right.
And that's courageous leadership for myself, because we are leading ourselves.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so let's go on to the next benefit. You can ask us some questions related to that. I'm not going to share it yet, but I will share it in a moment.
Okay. How do you encourage courage in the people that you lead?
It kind of goes back to what I had said at the last bit, is doing small things. And what I told Adam is, begin small, and that's going to be your best bet. So especially if you haven't, it's just like a muscle. If you've broken your arm, it takes a while to build back that bicep and the tricep. So the same thing with courage. It's like, do courageous things small. And whether it's getting up out of bed in the morning when your alarm clock goes off, keeping to your schedule, making a well thought out schedule, and kind of keeping to it. Like, don't add salt into your, don't salt your food. Something small. It's nothing. We take in enough salt.
Yeah.
You don't need it. So just like, so you'd build on that small thing. So if it's with a coworker or with a client, it's like, okay, what's one small courageous step you can take this week and come back and tell me about it? And it's just like Adam said, it builds. And then you're much more able to handle the bigger things that are going to come along.
Yeah, the best way to handle the crises that you have not faced yet is how you live your day to day.
Right.
And you're preparing for it. Because that reminds me, there's this list of 27 brave actions. And I want to just tell you, like, there's a link in the show notes to a blog post called 7 Benefits of Being Brave. And in there, you can download a PDF of 27 brave actions. And some of the things on there are like, call up a friend to share something funny that you've experienced recently. That could be a brave action for somebody. Ask for help or advice from someone that you're close to. Just ask. I mean, like, that can be hard, especially for helpers to be, you know, if you're used to being the one helping and you're saying, hey, can you help me? Wow. I mean, that was a big challenge for me at times in my life. Go to a workout class you haven't attended before, meet new people, you know, try a new hobby. Wow. Talk to a stranger. Those are different things, but if you make a commitment and you do it, and that's the thing for me is, how do I encourage other people to be courageous? Is you help them to see there's a commitment they can make that could be really beneficial for them. So at the end of a coaching session, the clients commit to taking some kind of an action. And so they have something that they've gained insight from the conversation. And then they're like, I want to do this. Because we'll ask them, like, what do you want to do to move the needle here? And they're like, well, I'm going to do, you know, I'm going to have that conversation that's tough, or I'm going to fire that employee, or that's usually not one of their commitments. But I mean,
let's hope not.
Let's hope not. But, you know, and then we can add to that. Sometimes I'll say, well, you do this, you know, I think this would really benefit you. So go ahead, and you've mentioned a lot about wanting to to apologize to people. You've gotten this insight about how you came across most likely to other people, and you want to apologize. So can you apologize to 3 people? When we meet in 2 weeks, can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. Okay. So, and they're going to be energized by it. I mean, you can pick up, I'm not going to ask them to do things they're not willing to do, but it's something we recognize could be challenging for them. And I can do that. And you can do that for people in your life. Like, hey, could you do this? Like a golf coach. Could you go and just hit 30 golf balls with one hand just to strengthen your left arm, and just try that drill and tell me how it went? Yeah, I could do that. That'd be cool. Like, okay, I want to do that. But it took somebody asking. It's like, you know, if you were not asked, then why would we even think about it? No, I didn't know about that drill. I didn't know I could even try to do that. I mean, to me, it's like, I didn't know I could actually make contact that way. Well, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. And so could you do it? So you have to ask. And if you don't ask, because that shows that you believe in somebody when you ask them to do something. It really shows them that you believe. It's like when you ask someone for help, you're showing that you believe they have this way they can help you.
Right.
And that's really pretty stinking cool, especially if it's an area of expertise for them. And they're like, damn straight, I'd like to help you. Like, do you like giving golf advice? Is that?
I do. I do.
Yeah, that's good.
I do, but I always, anytime, I always ask first. It's like, hey, do you need some help? I played with a guy on Sunday morning, and he was all over the place. And I said, before I say anything, would you like any tips? Yeah. And he goes, I would love them. And I was just like, and by the end of 9 holes, he was like, I can't thank you enough for the tips you gave me. I'm hitting the ball so well. Yeah. And I was like, walked away and like, good job, Max.
Yeah, because you're very good at it, and you approach it with a healthy approach. You know, like so. But I'm glad to know you do really enjoy that, because I don't know unless I'd asked you. Like, I'm assuming you enjoy it, or maybe you just don't want to play with bad golf and slow you down. You're just trying to get him to come on. You got to do this so we can get on with the next hole. We've been at this hole way too long.
He's coaching you, Adam.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very good feedback. So.
Yes. Okay. Ready for the next question?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the hardest truth you've had to communicate as a leader, and how did you do it?
The hardest truth. Well, I go back to a situation I had probably in my first pastorate. I was young. I had a couple secretaries who had some difficulties. with me insofar as some of the things I asked of them and that what they asked of me. And they kind of wanted to be more like co-pastors with me. And I was just like, no, this is kind of my job and I want you to help me though. But they wanted more of the co-pastoring. And so they said, I'm going to leave. So I went out on a limb and I hired this wonderful woman from Great Britain. And just a wonderful girl. She was probably, and I've said this to other secretaries I've had, she was the best I've ever had as a secretary. I could start a project and she would finish it. I would start a sentence, she would finish it. And one day, though, after about a couple years as my secretary, she didn't communicate something to me that was vitally necessary at the time. And I knew it. And she was coming to the Pastoral Council meeting as secretary, and I saw her outside, and I asked her to come outside for a second so I could talk to her. And I relayed, it was the hardest thing, really, one of the many hard things I've ever had to do to a person I deeply respected and loved. I had to say, you failed here in a very bad way, in a very vital point. And I need you not to do that. And I can't afford you to ever do that again. And with the Great Britain kind of way of living with a stiff upper lip, she just said, "It will never happen again, Father. Thank you." And I was scared. What would the next day bring? Would it be a frosty fridge in there in the office, and it was just normal, back to normal. But doing that courageous thing that I didn't want to do is I did it with kindness to her. I wasn't mean. I was just, this is the facts, and here where we failed, and I can't have you do that again. And I think she appreciated it, that I was just frank and I wasn't yelling or angry about it. I was just like, here we go.
Yeah. Just matter of fact.
Yeah.
And how did that impact her performance?
She never failed in that area ever again. And in fact, she went on to better and greater things as secretary.
Yeah.
But no, actually, that was the thing. It didn't affect her performance in any other negative way, which was my fear. Is like, if I tell her this, is she going to be very cold?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
She could be defensive
all those things.
Being vulnerable by actually doing that. So, the thing that comes to mind for me is when I had to confront that situation I referenced back many years ago, when I had to and did confront the person involved and said this was wrong, and that was really terrifying. And I can think of two friends right now that had to have that I could tell when because it came to mind, like a friend who told me, Adam, you need to work on your insecurity, self-confidence, because sometimes it oozes out of you. And that was hard because I don't want to look at that, and so, but it helped me because I would look, well, that's not me, who are you talking about? But I knew they cared about me too, so I couldn't just discount it because there must be something that they're saying that really is accurate there. And I can just, as we talk about it, I think, man, that was probably really hard because they had to probably think about that. Like, I'm going to say this to Adam when I see him, and wow, they did. And two people, so I can think of, it's pretty powerful.
Those are good friends to have.
Those are good friends to have, yeah. And I've had that. So
yes. In what ways does vulnerability play a role in courageous leadership?
I think it's a vital part of it, because when you're courageous, one of the things about engaging in courage is doing something that's hard, whether it's small or big. But courage and action doesn't mean you're right. You can be courageous and make a bad mistake and fail in some way. And so really vulnerability is that willingness to understand that this could be wrong. And it's okay if I find out on the tail end or wherever, somewhere along the line, that I find out that this was not the right decision. This wasn't the right way to handle it. I did do a hard thing, but now I need to have learned from that and see how I could do it better. But that vulnerability, willing to be vulnerable, willing to take a chance and recognize those, and being willing really for the feedback that you might need, and understand that it's not an attack, it's the facts.
Right.
Yeah.
People don't like receiving feedback sometimes.
No.
Mm-mm.
No.
It's
There's an art to it.
Yeah.
There's an art to everything, really, but I think it's a key thing. If you're not willing to recognize that you may not be right in everything you do, because guess what? You're human. So expect to fail from time to time. Expect to be wrong. And it's a difference. One of my favorite spiritual writers says, it's a difference between the way you look at the world. Is the world a war, or is it a playground?
That's good.
And it's two different things.
Yeah.
If you're in war, you die and you make a mistake. If it's a playground, you dust off your knees, get up, and go back at it.
And you're learning every step of the way. Yeah. So if I'm vulnerable with people, I will tell myself, and I feel this attitude of like, if I'm vulnerable and I share that I'm struggling here, or I don't have it all figured out, or I'm asking questions, then I'm going to be perceived as being weak, and then my team's going to lose confidence in me, or my clients are going to lose confidence in me. And that hasn't actually turned out to be the case. I have history of that now. So like I said, when I didn't want clients to know that I was divorced, and it's still when I get a new client, I don't want to necessarily tell them that, but I do. I mean, it always comes out because I think that could lead to judgment, but very rarely has it actually. I mean, it has, but very rarely has it, because they almost see that as like that. It's like, you may understand pain and empathize more because of what you've been through, so, but it still is there. Like, it's still that I want to be guarded. I don't want to let people know that I'm struggling. I want to isolate and kind of hide out, but why don't I remember that? It's so crazy. Like, I know that, okay, so like I could have, and I think today even, like, I have been going 100 miles an hour in some ways professionally because of a lot of transition and change. And so, I mean, I didn't want to share with my team that I haven't felt like I've really done the best job of pursuing potential business growth opportunities and really taking advantage of that. I didn't want to tell them that, hey, so getting all this stuff on paper related to our process is I'm not the best at that, but actually that opened up a door to get help because I was willing to admit it. But I still, in my mind, I think, I'm letting them down. I'm letting them down. But
You're not.
And it's really interesting. So, but and I'm being there's vulnerability that's real and genuine, and then there's also false kind of vulnerability. And this is what I've seen, because people who have been in manipulative relationships and even had narcissistic type dynamics in a relationship. So vulnerability can be used to get what somebody wants. So, they're being vulnerable in a sense, but it's used to manipulate and to pull you in. It doesn't mean that it's genuine. It doesn't mean they really believe that. I mean, in a sense, it's really lying. It's like they're saying what could get you to, it seriously could be even predatory behavior. You think of some of the stuff that,
you're right.
Right? I mean, it's like, so.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that, don't go out diagnosing people as a narcissist because they pull at your heartstrings. That's not, this is one of the most misdiagnosed things. I mean, people use the word narcissist and they really, the one other thing I want to ask them is like, well, who diagnosed them as a narcissist? Because they'll say, my narcissistic sister-in-law. Okay, well, who diagnosed your sister as a narcissist? Okay, so and then they really have it. I don't want to say that in a judgmental way, but like, what makes you believe that they're a narcissist? And often it's just, very kind of, well, she's always wanting to go to the same restaurant and not really listening to me. And she's always talking about herself. But that's not really narcissistic behavior. They may be very insecure, and so so we want to be very careful with that. But that's like the mental health-ish concern of the year. You have these different things, whatever it is. But the thing that the second really big benefit of being courageous is that it's going to improve your relationships. And you have to almost talk yourself into believing that. Like it's going to improve your relationships. So by being courageous, it's going to improve. It's going to actually build trust in your clients and in your employees. It's going to build trust in your family, even though they may not like what you have to say. It's going to build trust, because asking a question of somebody can be a brave interaction, especially with a very guarded person. You're asking them a very hard question, and you know there's going to be pushback, but you're still asking.
Yes.
That's tough. Ask any parent of a teenager.
Yeah.
Ask any parent of a teenage girl. I can speak directly to that. Can be tough, but it doesn't mean you don't want to ask the question. It's like,
right.
It doesn't mean, but so that's the bravery part. It's going to improve relationships. And sometimes what I find is when we listen to our anxiety, it's self-sabotage. It's relationship sabotage. Because if I keep listening to these fears, I don't have to deal with the relationship dynamics that are going to make for the intimacy. Because on the other side of actually being courageous in your relationships is where the intimacy actually is. Because you got through. And by intimacy, I'm not thinking anything sexual. I'm thinking completely closeness in relationships.
Right.
Having no fear about how those other people are going to perceive or use you.
Yeah, which is so refreshing, because how much anxiety do we get in our interactions when we're trying to predict their response?
Right.
And we don't listen to them then, because we're already formulating a response when we're zoning into what they're saying. It's like that anxiety cannot coexist with us being genuinely curious in what they're actually saying.
Yes,
it's amazing.
it is.
So when we're brave, we are actually putting ourselves in a situation where we're not going to be anxious when we're brave. On the other side of that bravery is the growth, which is pretty stinking amazing. So, like real situation here. I had a business owner guy, and who has struggled at times with building the connections with his team, and he doesn't necessarily see it all the time. And by the way, just to protect the identities of the businesses that I work with, I sometimes change their genders as I talk about them. So you're not gonna know whether it's a he or a she. But anyway, he, I'm not gonna. But he's done some really brave things, like having important conversations, scheduling meetings with his team, doing things. And what I have seen is he's getting more feedback on his own leadership that's helping. They're feeling more comfortable saying this would be helpful in the company, and they're identifying more dangers in the company, like red flags. We need to deal with this, because the lines of communication through his bravery have opened up, because he's being vulnerable, and they're seeing that they can share openly with him.
Right.
Which is great, because I mean, how many leaders do you hear this say, share whatever you want, be open. and then, it's for that you can't really share openly.
No.
Right.
No.
And I really hope that's not
danger.
me. Because I do believe that has been me at times. I mean, I've gone by the cliche to my daughter, like, share whatever you want. And I don't know, I have probably not given out that vibe, because I'm not really flexible in certain areas. But even though I look back and I say, because there was a period of time where it was kind of a non-negotiable with Emerson that she goes to youth group, right? And then, but she did not want to go for a period of time when she was 17. I mean, she did not want to go. But then, even then, I look back on those at times like, this is something we do. And I really think it's going to be an important thing. And then she would go, and then she'd get back plugged in, and then she'd be excited about it. And she would never really say, thank you, Dad. But I look back and think there are times like that, so I think as she grows, I have these daydreams where Emerson's like thanking me for challenging her there, like coming back saying, Dad, I'm really grateful that you challenged me to stay plugged into church. Or I'm really glad you challenged me to, stick it out with something like her job at Chick-fil-A. She wanted to quit. And I was just like, Emerson, you gotta make sure you leave there in the right way. And I'm going to put a hard no on this thing.
Right.
And, she was 14. And so.
Yes.
I was going to say, wait 15 more years and she'll come back and say how smart you were.
Yeah, I was going to say, it just takes time.
I don't want to wait 15 years. Like, I want her to say when she's 18.
Yeah, that's not going to.
No.
No,
it's
not going to happen.
No.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the third benefit, and ask us some questions on this topic as well. And then I'll kind of highlight that area as well, the benefit of being courageous.
What's a mistake you made that required courage to admit, and how did it impact your leadership?
Actually, I've been very blessed in making lots of mistakes.
Oh, great.
And I made some big ones when I was very young as a pastor. And I was at my first parish, and I can still remember exactly. I can't remember what the argument was about or what the situation was particularly, but I remember going in there kind of full of myself and kind of saying, I kind of know this religious stuff. I kind of know theology. I kind of know church stuff. So let me help you let me be the guide, and I'll kind of tell you. So I presented this situation to the pastoral council, and they all said, you should do B. Let's do B as a parish. And again, I thought to myself, I've got a master's. I got 2 masters. I've got this, and this. I think we should do A. And in fact, we're going to do A.
Because you had the master's degrees.
Yeah, because I had all the letters.
I know.
I got letters.
Right, yeah.
I got the black clothes. I got everything. So we left that, there was a little feedback, but I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So I left that meeting, and about 5 days later, a week later, I remember discovering that those 8 people were correct, and I should have done B, and I should have enforced B, whatever it happens to be. And I just knew it. And at the same time, I was like, oh my gosh, I've made a big mistake. And how am I going to tell these people that I've made this big mistake? And so actually I called them back for an emergency meeting the next day. And I said, everybody that can make it, make it. And I got up in front of all of them and I said, I want to tell you, I made a big mistake. I should have gone with your B, not my A. You were right. And the impact on me was that and they were like, thank you. Great. Let's keep working together. And that's really what it taught me, was that I have my own set of particular skills that I really have honed well now after 40, 60 years. But everybody else in the room has some skill set that probably I don't have, and I need to listen to it. Or they have perspective that I don't have. I'm never going to know what it's like to have a kid. I mean, I've dealt with lots of family issues in my life. I've got my own family that I have to deal with. But so I need to be able to say, hey, this single mother, this single father, you need to listen to them. They have some insights that you do not have and never will. And you have some insights they may never have. And so it's taught me to be much more collaborative, really, in effect.
Yeah.
And in some respects, I'd say vulnerable to what someone else may say that I may cringe at or just not understand yet.
And maybe you will have a kid.
Yeah, who knows? Well, let's no.
No, you wouldn't have, no babies. Okay.
No
Okay.
plans.
Maybe you have a step kids.
Well,
it's possible. That's very possible.
Yes, it could be.
Okay. Yeah, we're trying to set you up. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, it's
Yes.
good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my grandfather had my aunt when he was 50. And
So Adam.
So hey, who knows? So
Yeah.
that's right. I'm 51 though.
Yeah,
a
but
little bit different there. So
not much.
So it's hard for me. One situation that was hard is admitting to. There was a time where I admitted that I had lied to my daughter. I admitted that I had lied to my daughter about something, and I can still in my mind kind of rationalize and justify it. But I said, that wasn't right. And I'm not going to go into details of it.
Right.
But I told her, and hey, because we had talked about being honest and this and that. And I kind of, in my mind, I justified, well, that really wasn't lying. That really wasn't lying. But I could have said something different. Like, I'm not willing to do that because I made an agreement and I didn't follow through on the agreement I had. And I justified it saying that's just because because that's what dads do in certain situations. So, but that's it. That's kind of freeing, though, to me, to say, Emerson, I did that, and I'm sorry, and I apologize. I apologize is a word.
I think it's important for kids to hear that their parents make mistakes.
Yeah, I apologize.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
So Sherman, what kind of courageous example do you hope to leave behind for others?
That the example I would hope would be that you sometimes have to make the hard decision after prayer, consideration, speaking with others, sharing with others, being vulnerable in those ways, that you have to be able to make a hard decision, even though, let's say, like in my case, the system does not want you to ever break away from that. And so that's the example I would hope I would be, is that I'm not crazy. I'm not whacked out, and I made a hard decision that a lot of people wouldn't want to make, and not one I necessarily wanted to make, but I made it. And so that gives them maybe the insight that they might need to say, is this something I need to consider?
That couple things that he was willing to face his past and mistakes and go in and deal with it, and that I can do the same thing and not discount that. As you think about being courageous, that internal courage that you're facing those areas that you haven't faced, the insecurity driven areas, whether that was when you were 5 years old or 10 years old or something, and you're able to say and admit, although people around you may not admit that had a big impact on you, that has impacted my central nervous system, and I react to people based on that, and I'm going to do what it takes, as painful as it is, to get the freedom from it, so I'm not going to be living there anymore, and to admit that. And to start then recognizing then when you are being impacted. So, I mean, that's one that comes to mind. I mean, he was a person that was willing to apologize and change, to say he's to admit that he was wrong and change based on that. And that's a work in progress, because I can think of the emotional reactions that I can have where I've said I was sorry, but I have still an emotional reaction to a certain situation, which is actually a reminder that I got a lot more work to do, but then I've let people down in those situations, so that is a big deal.
It's okay to make mistakes.
Okay, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. If your team described you in one sentence about courage, what would it be?
I would say that they would say he is a Renaissance man insofar as he's able to take in lots of information and make the courageous decision.
Yeah. And I would say for me, he was willing to, as much as he talks himself out of it and second guesses, ultimately he did the hard thing to grow, and that I can do it too.
Yeah.
I can do it too. And part of that to me has been just willing to talk about the hard, because you realize that if you don't talk about the stuff you've gone through, for one, people don't talk about it because they haven't worked through it a lot, or because they have shame, which is an indication that they're blaming themselves and they're not working through it. They're not talking about it much, and they don't have that as a resource. So the past is one of the most valuable assets that you have. Your past is one of the most valuable assets that you have to help other people. When you see it that way, not only does it motivate you to work on it, it motivates you to get to the other side so you can help other people.
Right.
Because ultimately, I believe that's what people want to do, have the impact on the world that they believe that, and they know inside that they were given a gift of life to have an impact.
Yes.
Whether they're 95 years old or 5 or 6 or 18 or whatever. So that brings me to the third major benefit, and I'm going to share the major benefit after I share one thing with you. If you found this helpful, you know where to go. Go to Shatterproof Yourself Light in the link, and you're going to get 7 small steps to a giant leap. It's a 25-minute video and a 4-page worksheet you can complete. You can download the app. You get the daily action worksheet, which is a wonderful tool to get out of your own fear and into your progress.
Right.
And you get these 7 steps. So you're going to get some clarity right away that you can check out. So you want to go there and check it out, and it's going to help you and challenge you to be more courageous. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. So the third benefit is that when you are courageous, more courageous as a leader, it's going to increase your self-confidence overall, not only in your professional life, but in your personal life. So if you're willing to go and face one fear when you have a hard conversation, it may give you, and it will over time, but it may not feel like it right away, but you're actually willing to go ahead and do something with more confidence in another area of your life as well. And what is confidence? Confidence is faith. I heard a sermon one time. It's confide. I do not know this for sure, but fide has a Greek root or whatever, a Latin. I'm not sure. Latin. Mm-hmm. Okay. So with faith, and you're growing that faith that you believe in yourself, that what you have to offer is worthy, And that's a great way to live, because that's not arrogance. That's not believing we're better than somebody else. It's not being in one of those boxes, better than, worse than, need to be seen, all those kinds of things. It's actually living in your own skin and realizing that you have something to offer and you have tremendous value to add. And your courage is going to give you more and more of that. Who would not want that?
Exactly.
So, like, what better thing? And that's really what people are looking for. Like, we think of the leaders we work with, they're wanting more confidence, to live with faith, not to live stuck in their head, overanalyzing, calculating all their responses, but to let go and to do the next right thing and to trust God in the process.
That's right.
And to have faith, which is really cool. So in review, when you live courageously, it's going to decrease your anxiety. That's one of the big benefits. It's actually going to improve your relationships, and it's going to increase your confidence, which is a byproduct of improved relationship and decreasing anxiety. It's one of the next steps there. It's like we're going to get more confident in ourselves because you're not listening to your fears. You're actually listening to faith and hope and living there as well. So you will make my day if you, based on this content, take an action. There is no positive change unless you take action. 80% of making a life transformation is taking action. 20% or less is insight. Insight without action and commitment isn't going to help you grow and make those changes. That's the scary part. It's the most necessary part. There's no positive change until you decide to change. Deciding means you're eliminating other options. You have all these other things you can do, and you're deciding to do this one action that you know and you believe is the best next right step. Good is the enemy of the great. Your legacy is the impact your life has on other people. You decide your legacy. So I'm going to close today the way I always do. Live the life today that you want to be remembered for 10 years after you're gone. You decide your legacy, no one else. I appreciate you greatly. I'm very grateful for Sherman and Kelsey today.
Thank you.
And I will talk to you very soon. Next time. Bye-bye.